Down here, Cedar Bayou, it's been pretty good. You get the right kind of day where you don't have a super high winds like we had this past week. We had a few days where that wind was really cranking on us, so it made it difficult to do something like this. But if you get the right kind of wind, you can get down here on Cedar and you can fish up and down the edges here on here and fish off some of the little side spots there that are on there. They got little flats on either side. They're not super big, wouldn't be a very long wade for you, but when you have some fish that are kind of hanging in an area, you just kind of wait on them and just surgically work on them, then you can do okay. And then, of course, if you want to just go ahead and go on out to the surf and fish out there on the right kind of day, then you can have some pretty good days out there as well. But we've been primarily just kind of fishing these edges along here, catching some flounder, which kind of what we were hoping that we would do, and we did. We caught a few of those. Of course, we've got redfish and trout starting to really show up now. Of course, the trout are, you're catching some decent fish that are in that new slot, the 15 to 20-inch slot. We're catching them in that, but we're also catching a lot that are just under that slot, in that 14, 14 half, 14 3/4, bunch of those in there as well. So when you kind of get onto some of these fish like that in some of these areas, make sure that you just kind of take your time, catch as many of them as you want to catch. You may have one of those type of days where it's a 100 fish day, but you may have 85 of them that are 14 3/4 or less, and we've had some days like that. Fun nonetheless. And then we've caught some decent trout in that 15 to 20 range, so it's fine. It works out good. Like I say, you're steady catching some fish, and then every so often you'll put a solid fish on the stringer in the box if that's what you so choose to do. We've been working down this back shoreline here on the Matagorda side. We've caught a few redfish that are here on that flat. Now, we had some super low tides as well. We had some negative tides for a few days, and we've had to contend with that, so you have to change your fishing up somewhat. Just kind of fish the edges, the drops that are out there on some of these areas like that. So those fish will kind of move out there off the top of that. So it kind of lets you know that you're gives you that affirmation you're doing the proper thing to find and locate your fish. Up on some of the super, super shallow grass areas and some of the little potholes that are in there, little craters, if you will, we found a few little pods of redfish. Maybe a 25 to 30 fish here and there. Not big pods of them, but just scattered out, and you can see them, especially when that tide's really dropped out and you got that gin clear water that's in there. You can see those little tails sticking up out of that water like that, and they're kind of sniffing around, looking, primarily feeding on crab. We've cleaned a few redfish, and there's a bunch of little, about quarter-size crab in their guts. So that's just a good indicator for you. Primarily what they're eating and what they're wanting to do. And there's artificial baits that are out there that are crab-shaped and flavored. So if you can grab you some of those if you so choose, if that's what you're really wanting to target or something to that effect. But anyhow, we've been working this back edge. We've even kind of worked up into Bray Cove some, wading these edges in and around that. Kind of, again, with the lower tides and stuff, we've been working the drop edge that's out there, a little bit over the deeper grass. Locating trout. Like I say, we've caught a bunch of this, the smaller 14s to 15-inch. Then we'll catch a 16, 17, or 18 in there, sprinkled in there with that. So it makes it interesting and fun. And then the guts, the mouths here that go to some of the back lakes, like Little Brunnett area back in here. I've waded up into those mouths like that and fished some of that, which is very fishable. Now, they've got the bridge built back up back here on this, so you can only fish this side here with your boat. Or you can walk across and get on the back side there and just kind of wade yourself down there. So that'll make for a longer day for you, but if you so choose, you can do that. It's still accessible, but primarily by foot now. And then, of course, the big back lake that's on this side here, depending on what wind you got, how you're going to set up to fish it. But we've caught, we're throwing topwaters and lay-lays in this kind of area back here when that water's about knee-deep, and we've been pulling redfish out of this particular area back in here. And then, of course, come back out, work the shorelines, work the structure that's out there, the grass and everything. Plenty of bait. A lot of the bait migration's taking place. So, we'll have winds like we had this past week that pushed a lot of water out, and then we'll have some high winds that's going to come from the other direction, the south direction. It's going to push water back for us. So it's just kind of a fluctuation game. You just have to pay again. Mentioned it before. Pay attention to your tides to start your day. That's very important, especially right now as how volatile our winds are and how it pops up on you. It can really push water around. So make sure you pay attention to those. Our majors and minors were our main source of production for us this past week. We were looking for lots of those types of things. Some of the days we had it kind of filtered past when that time frame was, or it began before that time frame was. So I say, if you can give yourself 2.5 to 3 hours in a particular area and just fish it, fish that major or the minor, whatever it may be, and give yourself plenty of opportunity. Main baits that we've been using this past week, we're on the back side of the new moon. We fished a lot of the new moon, which was pretty productive for us in those time frames on those minors, rising and setting. And so we had some solid days. Primarily, we're using original size down south in multiple different flavors, and we're using burner shad in multiple different flavors. Those were the two primary baits that were productive, at least for me and my groups that I had. And then the times where we just kind of set ourselves up to get in the back lakes, we were kind of pinpointing like a thing just to have an experience throwing the topwater bait and just kind of sticking with it to see if we can get them to eat that. If not, then we'd switch back to our plastics and start catching a few more fish. But it was fun nonetheless. So if you get an opportunity to do that, chunk that topwater back in there and have some fun with that. The knock and tail, in the three main flavors that I've mentioned in the past, Rogue, heavy metal, greenbacks have been very productive for us. Another flavor that's been good for us in the mirror lures has been the Little Johns and the golden red glitter primarily. Kitchen sink's been okay, but the golden red glitter's been very good for us. Has been very productive. And then, of course, I mentioned the topwater bait just a minute ago. So, but anyway, those main flavors and colors are baits that we've had. Of course, back in the down south, Twisted Tea, Big Papa, White Ice, Bone Diamond were the also in the burner shad, the same flavors with mud minnow and firecracker being good. And, of course, Supernatural in the burner shad have been very good for us as well. So just pay attention with your upcoming weather, because like I said, we're kind of in that time of year where things kind of flip around pretty quick on you. So make sure you got a good 36-hour window that you can comfortably fish and not be too worried about conditions, but you can fish it safely. You can fish on high wind days, but unless you're just comfortable to do that, if you have the opportunity to back it up or move it to another day, then do so to give yourself the best opportunities. From Long Reef Bend, up here on the point of Paul's Mott in this area, all back down in here, all the way back around here to this edge and this little flat that runs back down in here. It's been very good for trout. A lot of, like what I mentioned in that last video, bunch of little trout in the system, man. They're starting to show up in droves. There's just hundreds of them in lots of different locations. But with that said, you'll find some better fish in there if you just give yourself time. That's the beauty of fishing with an artificial bait. You can throw that thing and throw that thing and throw that thing, and if you know which baits are a little bit more tough than others as far as durability goes, then you give yourself a really good chance. You can catch 50 or 60 fish on one bait, and you're never changing it out. All you're doing is having fun catching. That's a really big advantage. So if you're very knowledgeable about which baits are which and how they hold up to whatever kind of stuff, then you can set yourself up and give yourself a big favor there in that. So we've been, like I say, the down south is some of those baits. Knock and tail are some of those baits. Mirror lure, the Little Johns are really durable. And all those Marker 54s, another one of the new baits that they've come out with their paddle tails. They've got that new TCP material that's in there. It's real stretchy. It's a lot like a Z-Man material bait if you've fished with those before. Once you get that jig head on there, man, those fish are not going to tear it up. Pin perch are not biting the tails off of them. They're not going to tear them up and take them away from you or anything like that. So just FYI, really good baits that you can throw, especially in this time frame in here in the springtime. We're working the edges with the water dropping out. When the water comes back up, we're pushing up closer to the shoreline or that mid-level water that's in there between the drop and the shore, spreading people out across those and being able to fish the grass and the potholes. A lot of these fish are showing up over the hard-packed sand and grass now and kind of migrating away from the mud in the grass, which we're still catching them in those areas. But another thing that we're starting to notice, too, is the reefs are starting to light up. We were fishing 2 or 3 different reefs this past week, and we caught several fish off of those, which is a good sign that these fish are migrating back over to shell bars and shell reefs. So as we move forward into our rest of our springtime and head towards summer as we get past May, we've got a lot of April left, of course all of May, and then we're going to be right up there in the summertime. It's going to be right around the corner. It's not far away. So really start kind of looking around with next time you get on the water, whenever that is. If you've got some reefs that you like to fish, especially up in this area, you got Long Reef, you got Jaybird, you got Spalding Reef, you got a lot of the little assorted reefs that are on the other side, Tin Can, Half Moon, those that are over there as well, around just right down from the Long Reef area on the other side of the ICW. You can give those a shot to see. The Fingers of Carlos, there's another area too that can light up for you. But just FYI that we're locating and finding fish on these reefs now. So that's a great thing that's happening and taking place. We like that when that takes place. There's Jaybird right there. And of course you got Spalding down here as well. And of course Carlos, you've got all these reefs that are in here on this other side of that and this whole back side there. Just kind of depending on the day, that's how it sets up for you, which way the wind is coming from, if it's east, southeast, south, whatever. Say it's kind of been variable for us from a lot of things, but especially on those high wind days, just find you one of those areas you can kind of get protected to a point and really work in and around those reefs. Still, your grass is the common denominator no matter where you're trying to fish. If you've got an area that's got grass, there's lots of fish that are hanging over these and in and around those potholes. Like I say, the amount of bait that's in there is really good. So you kind of match what your water clarity is, size of your bait, and seeing a lot of finger mullet, a lot of pin perch, little piggies, that kind of thing. They're in there. So another bait that would be good, depending on the depth of water that you're fishing, would be the soft dines, and the soft dine XLs would be another good choice in that time frame because it's matching that profile size. So just kind of look at that and see and observe and what's going on. Again, if you have multiple people in your fishing party on any particular day that you have, just rig each person up with something different, size, profile, color, and see if something really stands out. So that's like I say, the fish will talk to you if you're paying attention to what they're wanting. You can narrow it down pretty quick and start getting on them and start catching them. But like I said, we've had some really good days this past week out here on some of these areas. Not on days the big super high winds that we had there for 3 or 4 days. We had to run and find a little cover for us to help us out, but we still found fish. But that's the thing that you can do. Give yourself those opportunities. Pay attention to weather patterns. Again, majors and minors, majors and minors, and majors and minors. I can't stress it enough, especially for people that throw in artificials all the time. It's a very key factor into your day. Again, your tides. Like I say, we've had such high winds, it's pushing water all over our estuaries. Pay attention to what those are, not put yourself in a little bit of trouble. If you were running a particular area one day and you come back through there again, there's not enough water to get over it. So anyhow, all important factors and features that you want to be able to pay attention to. But there's plenty of fish that are in our estuaries and they're starting to show up. So get out there on the water and have a great time. Port Bay area, Rattlesnake Point, Pete's Bend, Italian Bend, all this area down in here. Those big wind days that we had, we get back in some of these areas here. Of course, it's a little bit more difficult to get in and around on the more open water on those particular days when that big winds were blowing. So if you put in down there at that 188 boat ramp down there off the sand ramp, it's a pretty easy run for you. You can get to these areas pretty safely without just getting totally whipped as if you were coming from the Copano Bay Bridge and had to go into the teeth of it all the way down into these areas. It'd be a little bit more difficult. That'd have been those days where let's try to go somewhere else on a type of day like that. So anyhow, if you got in here to these areas like this in Peach, you can get protected on that shoreline there. You can wade all that. Other side of, where redfish, the place is, marina up there. Then, of course, back down here in Italian Bend, you can be all protected back in this area back through here. Plenty of area there that you can wade, not get beat up. This shoreline over here. Port Bay is another one. You can tuck up here onto this shoreline here. And, of course, again, with our fluctuation, our tides, this side over here on the Port Bay side, up here next to Swan Lake in that area, you've got that drop that's out there. So it really kind of lit up for us. We were finding fish in that 2 to 4 foot of water that were hanging off the edge. They necessarily went up there on top of that grass flat because there wasn't a lot of water that was there to begin with. Plenty of bait. There's anything wrong with that. So we just kind of worked the edges until we came across some fish, and we'd catch them for as long as we could catch them. Then once they kind of petered out on us, then we'd move on down and see if we could locate them somewhere else. But that was what kind of our tactic was. And then again, most of our production was in and around a major or a minor, depending on the time of day that we were fishing. So like I say, we got big moving tides that are coming back, real low tides right now that are morning, or not much water in our system in the mornings as of right now. Then we'll start to have the water coming back in the afternoon. So if you like to afternoon fish or evening fish, it's a good opportunity for you to catch some water back in the system. Just make sure you pay attention to what your tide gauge is and when that deviation is supposed to be into that particular area, because it's going to be different in different estuaries than it would be as if you're fishing at the jetties. So always make sure that you consider that when you do. Fishing around here, Grass Island, this area up in here, all the way down on the outside of Swan Lake has been good. Like I say, these fish are showing up over hard packed sand and grass now, incorporating a little shell here and there when you have the opportunity. And like I say, you've got multiple different areas now. It's not so much concentrated over just one particular type of structure anymore, where it was primarily grass and mud and in clump. Now we get to put you can still incorporate some muddy bottoms, but grass in those areas, hard packed sand, grass, shell bars, shell reefs are all starting to light up, and it should get better and better as we just continue on into our summertime. So put that back into your radar, where you're going to fish and locate. And again, the same flavors have all applied, no matter what estuary we're fishing in, the depth of water and how you can control the depth of that, and and how it works for you. It's primarily up to you. So you have a bunch of different options on what you want to be able to throw and what you can be able to do to find and catch your fish, but there's plenty of fish to be had. And then, again, it's what I said earlier. Just make sure you get out there, be safe, number one, but have a big time and enjoy yourself fishing. Remember, fishing's great every day. It's the catching that varies.